Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class today. It's 12, well, it's about 10 degrees warmer than it was a couple days ago in the studio. It's up to 62. Heat here at the farm is running full tilt. We're up to 62, and, you know, I'm not complaining. I think we're doing really well compared to a lot of places in the United States of America. So today it's tips from the book, and if you'd like to call in, if you have a tip, or if you want to add, subtract, multiply, or divide something that I've said as a tip, feel free to do so. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. We'll pay for the call, but you know, don't get us side wobbled. Yeah, I really don't want to get off the topics that I plan on talking about, which are tips that you can use. I'm going to talk about automotive tips, and I'm going to be talking about the weather, and I'm going to be talking about heating, and I'm going to be talking about, you know, antifreeze, things like that. And the reasons why I want to do this, and this is USA Prepares. This is what we do, and this is what I would prefer to talk about today. Jason, thank you for engineering the broadcast at GCN, Genesis Communications Network, the powerhouse in communications. That's not their words. That's my words, the powerhouse. And so you go out to start your vehicle. And first of all, you shouldn't start your vehicle in these freezing temperatures, you know, when it's like 0, less than 0, you know, minus. The reason is the fluids are all cold, freezing cold. The fuel's cold. The power steering fluid is cold. The transmission fluid is cold. The engine oil is cold. Everything's cold. And the plastic parts are all brittle, more brittle than they are when they're at normal temperatures, like 70 degrees outside, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So you start your car and it's brutal on the starter. It's brutal on the battery. It's brutal on everything. And your oil pump in your engine is trying to pump that engine oil, that lubricating oil, when it's like molasses. It's like that thick. And it's hard on the seals. There are camshaft seals. There are front and main bearing seals. There are transmission seals. There are power steering rack and pinion seals. There are power steering pump seals. There are seals that hold the hoses together, power steering hoses, automatic transmission fluid hoses, all kinds of seals. And because the lubricating oils and fluids are more viscous, more dense, more resistant to flow at cold temperatures, the pressures go up. The oil doesn't want to go through the oil filter. All kinds of pressures increase, and the likelihood of seals failing is really high. So the last thing you want to do is go out unnecessarily when it's cold. Like, you know, minus 11. But people have, and what they've found out was the cars won't start. And one of the reasons their cars won't start is because they've been using government-approved fuel, which is gasoline mixed with food. Well, not really food. Alcohol derived from corn. Some, I think, lobbyists have bribed our alleged representatives into putting alcohol into gasoline, about 10% at least. So just about all the gasoline that you buy has alcohol in it. And alcohol has, and they tell you that it's really good for the environment, it's cleaner, you get more power. Well, you don't get more power. You get less power, less horsepower. Now, how do I know that? Well, I know for two reasons. Number one, back in the late 1960s, early 1970s, when I built race engines and raced my own cars on the track, I added alcohol to the fuel to see how it affected performance. And it affects performance negatively. So if you think that you can add alcohol and get more horsepower, it's nonsense. Right? I mean, I've proven it to myself. I've proven it on the track. And I know for a fact that you'll get less performance. As a matter of fact, you'll lose races if you do that kind of stuff. All right. So that's one way I know. Another way I know is if you look at these flex fuel cars and you look at the, you can use, let's say 85% gasoline and 15% alcohol. If you look at those cars, you'll find out they get fewer miles per gallon than the cars that use gasoline. And the same cars that you can switch between higher content alcohol and lower content alcohol in the same vehicle, you'll get more miles per gallon with less alcohol content. So that kind of tells you very clearly that you're not going to make more power with alcohol or more horsepower or more torque with alcohol in increasing concentrations. So the federal government, through the help of, I believe, bribed Congress critters, has mandated that alcohol be added to gasoline at 10% content across the country. And that's what you're putting in your tank. Now, there is one good benefit. There is one. But we're wasting corn, that's for sure. And we're getting fewer miles per gallon, and we're destroying fuel systems, and the alcohol is eating the carburetors of lawn and garden equipment, like, rototillers, chainsaws, things like that. And so now carburetors are becoming a standard maintenance item. So what do? You clean the air filter, you change the oil, you replace the carburetor, which is ridiculous. The changing the oil is normal. The cleaning the air filter is normal, but the replacing the carburetor, it's ridiculous. When I was growing up in the 1960s and 50s, nobody replaced carburetors because it was a maintenance item. Carburetor lasted the life of the equipment. Carburetors lasted the life of the vehicles. Not anymore. Because the alcohol corrodes the aluminum parts. And what are carburetors made out of? Aluminum with a small percentage of brass parts. Maybe a few plastic parts. But in terms of content, I would say at least 95% of a carburetor, at least, is aluminum. Almost 5% might be brass, and maybe less than 1% plastic. So the fuel is destroying the fuel systems of cars because the government mandated alcohol being added to gasoline. Worse than that is when you try to start your vehicles, and people around here in our neck of the woods in Missouri are having a lot of trouble starting their vehicles. Why? They don't want to start because it's so cold. Why? Because the alcohol gasoline mixture that comes out of the pump at the local gas station or stop and rob station has 10% alcohol. It doesn't volatilize as well as gasoline. So cars won't start. Now, let's say you had an emergency. Let's say you had to get to the hospital, and you put your key in ignition and you go to take that person to the hospital, and your car won't start. Whose fault is that? Long pause. Whose fault is that? You thought it was going to start, but nobody told you. It doesn't say on the pump, caution, your car may not start in cold weather. Does it say that on the pump? No. Why? Why is there no warning? People have been taken by surprise. We got a call from a neighbor, and yesterday, neighbor said their tractor won't start. Well, it's hard to start tractors right now. It really is. It's so cold that the diesel fuel in tractors turns into like a gel, like gelatin almost. Now, you don't have to do anything when the weather warms up, it'll all go back to normal. You don't need to clean it. It'll all turn from gelatin back to diesel fuel when it starts warming up. So when we get to about 40 degrees, these tractors will start running again. But the neighbor did all the normal things. And this neighbor is a mechanic. He knows how to service and repair diesel engines and equipment. He's a pretty bright guy. Well, his diesel tractor won't start because the fuel has turned to gel. Now, where is it gel? It's in the tank, it's gel. It's in the fuel lines. It's in the fuel injection pump. It's in the high-pressure fuel lines and in the fuel injectors themselves. So his tractor won't start. That's not such a big deal, except for the fact that he needs the tractor to feed the cows, because the ground is covered with snow and the cows can't find the grass because there's 8 inches of snow on top of the grass. So he wants to take the hay that he's got and he wants to feed that to the cows, but he has to get it out of where he stores it and unroll it and feed the cows. But he can't because the fuel has turned to gel. Now, why is that? I don't really know. I can speculate, but I can tell you that diesel fuel turns to gel when it gets colder. But what we do is we added a half a gallon of, by the way, do your own research. Don't believe anything I say. Don't believe anything I say. We added a half a gallon of gasoline to about 10 gallons of diesel in the tank of our tractor. Okay. We got it started and we had to use starting fluid, and we didn't have to go to the store and buy it because we know that when it gets cold, it's really hard to start diesel engines. So we have starting fluid at the ready here at the farm. Why would we not have that? Costs maybe $1.50, $2 for a can. Why would we not have that ready? Why would we think that, they'll have it at the store, we'll go get it? Well, it's at the ready. And we've used starting fluid in the last 10 days to get our tractor started because it's that cold. But the fuel in our tractor did not gel because here's what we did. Before it got really cold, we added a half a gallon of gasoline to 10 gallons of diesel fuel. The tractor started, and we slowly poured in the gasoline to the tank, the tractor's fuel tank, that has diesel in it. Now, what happens with a diesel engine and gasoline engines is that the fuel that's unused, that's pumped from the fuel tank to the engine area, whatever's not used is sent back to the tank. That means there's a circular path. That means that fuel's moving. So if you add gasoline slowly to your fuel tank, as long as you have, at least 2/3 of a tank of fuel. These are my words, 2/3 of a tank. I don't think there's any scientific number, but 2/3 of a tank of fuel, you add it very slowly, the gasoline will mix with the diesel fuel, and the vibration of the tractor will stir in the gasoline for you. Because the last thing you want to do is dump a full shot of gasoline into the diesel injection pump, into the fuel injectors, into the combustion chamber, and cause an explosion and destroy your engine. You don't want to do this. You want to do it very, very slowly and carefully. So the board of directors has approved using the call screen today. Board of Directors of USA Prepare. So if you'd like to call, 866-582-9933. Well, let's stay on topic, okay? Preparedness. Surviving the cold weather, that kind of thing. So I've been talking about adding gasoline, plain old gasoline to diesel fuel. About a half a gallon to 10 gallons of diesel. And you can do that with a diesel car, diesel truck, but beware that gasoline does not have the lubricity necessary for the diesel fuel injection pump. So it's not a good idea. But if you're in a situation where you absolutely have to use the equipment, it works. Okay. And so our neighbor called and can't feed his cows because he can't get his tractor started because his fuel has turned to gel, and he's changed the fuel filters and all the normal things that you would do. It still won't start. So he wanted to hire us to help him get his cows fed. And here's our position. If you need help keeping your cows alive, we would be delighted to do it. There's no charge for that. That's what neighbors do. Neighbors help neighbors. But if this is an ongoing thing that's going to, run for a year, through the summer and all that, then there would be some kind of reciprocal compensation. But to get him out of a jam, we'll be delighted to help him. Kind of like, but when you contrast that with that car that was stuck down at the bottom of a ice-covered hill that I talked about, that's different. Okay, taking a car out in dangerous conditions like that and getting it stuck and then turning that into our problem, that's different. We're not going to risk life and limb in a situation that involves carelessness and recklessness. But in a situation like the cows not being able to be fed because his tractor won't start, we'll be glad to help. Now, what did this guy do to try to prevent it? I mentioned that he's a mechanic. Well, he put in all the additives that you would normally want to put in, but they didn't work. Now, what's the difference? Why is it that his diesel fuel has turned to gel and across the road at exactly the same temperature, ours hasn't? I don't know. When we buy diesel fuel, we buy premium diesel fuel. We buy diesel fuel that is treated for these awful temperatures and has more lubricity in it. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. I don't know what he bought. And actually, I don't even know what we bought. I mean, we believe we bought premium diesel, but do we really know? I don't know. I really don't know because I don't have the equipment to test it. But I do know that we're not having a problem. But we also prevented it from being a problem, the gelling situation, by adding gasoline. I don't know if you can hear that tap, tap, tap. There's a woodpecker right outside the studio who thinks that he's going to be able to drill a hole through the stone. I guess he's going to get a headache before he's done. But anyway, that's what's happening right now. He knows it's warmer in the studio than it is outside. It's pretty cold outside, about 14. All right, so that's the story on gasoline with alcohol, diesel fuel being gelatinous because of the cold temperatures. And do your own research. Look it up and do some reading for yourself. I just gave you the thumbnail sketch, a primer on how all this works. Next thing is antifreeze. Well, in October, we have a lot of equipment here, a lot of radiators, a lot of engines. Some are gasoline, some are diesel, some are air-cooled, some are liquid-cooled. Most are liquid-cooled. The ones that are liquid-cooled use antifreeze. And we have a hydrometer. And what it does is you squeeze this bulb, and there's a plastic see-through cavity. And there's a pointer and a dial that says, here's how much your coolant is resistant to freezing. I give numbers like 0 degrees, -10, -20, that kind of thing, +10, +20 Fahrenheit and Celsius. So we withdraw antifreeze and test every piece of equipment. We'll be right back. Okay, just me today, and got an email from a gentleman by the name of Joe. The last name begins with the letter B. Joe, I want to thank you for this email. I'm going to read it. It says, hi, Vince. Your show of February 17th with Gwyneth Isaacs. Hearing just part of the show, I would like to know if you can tell me or help me get a money order to her. I have no idea how to do that. U.S. to Australia, money order exchange, etc. I know she lives a hard life, and I would like to help her at this time of need, if only a little. Thank you, Joe. Wow. One of the things that we don't do here at USA Prepares anymore is, we don't ask for donations. Many years ago, there were people who were in tough situations and, they abused it. So, I cut that out really, really quickly. And, so what I did, Joe, is I sent a copy of your email to Gwyneth, and she will communicate with you directly. But I think that was very, very kind of you to offer to assist her in her time of need. I really, really appreciate that. And there are some kind people out there. They're few and far between. Most people are takers, and you have to wonder where, all of these benevolent people like Bill Gates, where is he? Where is he in the time of need when people are freezing to death? And Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all these multi-billionaires racing to claim to be number one, to earn more money. And the only way they can do it is through either deception or taking a lot of money from little people or working with the government. And so while Jeff Bezos is in the area of bankrupting the United States Postal Service because of special deals that he gets for his Amazon company, some people could say, well, that's really smart. He worked it out. Other people might say, how awful, how unlevel the playing field is. The rest of us are subsidizing Jeff Bezos' wealth. And then you have Bill Gates, who sells a defective operating system and then charges you for the upgrade or the update, or then stops supporting the software that you bought, that you thought you owned, that you only had a license to use. Or Elon Musk, who wants to bore holes in the atmosphere to go faster, 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 or bore holes in the earth to go faster, faster, faster through subway-type tunnels. By the way, the things that Elon Musk is trying to do, all of them have been done before. The electric car, I saw a 1906 electric car. I touched it. I saw it. He's not the first guy to have an electric car. There have been plenty of electric cars. By the way, how would you like to have an electric car right now? Cruise around Texas? Oh, would you be able to charge it? I read an article that said if you were to pay the current high peak price for electricity and you want to charge up your Tesla, it'd be $9,000 worth of electricity. Now, of course, that's an exaggeration. Of course, that's peak prices. I mean, that's not the norm. However, do you really think that what we're seeing right now, not enough electricity, not enough natural gas, refineries shutting down, do you really think that adding an additional load to the grid is a good thing? Do you really think so? Do you really think the grid can support it? If you look into what's happening in Texas right now, you will find out that they can't get the electricity. There's two kinds of ways of looking at electricity. There's power generation, generating that electricity, and then there's the distribution of it. So I ran for for the board of directors of an electric cooperative that just had the distribution side of the business. The power poles and the wires and that kind of thing, transformers, meters. Okay. But they didn't generate it. They bought the electricity from another company and they just sent it out through the cooperative's wires and transformers, etc. And they maintained it. But in Texas, what they're saying is, the wires are okay. They're not falling down. The ice hasn't taken them down yet, or at least most of them are still up. The problem is putting the electricity on those wires. They don't have enough. Why? Well, a lot of reasons why. Because the natural gas that comes out of the ground contains moisture. Naturally, it contains moisture because there's moisture in the ground. Well, when it comes up, that moisture tends to freeze. So at the wellhead, where it comes out of the ground, it's so cold that it's freezing at the wellhead, and it won't go any further. Now, why is that? Because the guys who approved the engineering designs didn't allow for, these are my words, this is my hypothesis, I don't have any proof of this. I just believe this is the case. The guys that approved the designs at the highest level of the corporation said, it's never going to freeze here. So we don't have to worry about the moisture freezing at the wellhead. So we don't have to provide insulation from the freezing temperatures. So now the natural gas coming out of the well with the moisture freezes, and the freezing moisture blocks the flow of natural gas. Now, where's that gas go? Well, some of it goes to power generation plants. So they don't have the natural gas to run the power generation plants to send the electricity down the line to the villagers. And then if you look at some of these drone videos and photographs and images, you'll see that downtown in Texas, the skyscrapers are all lit up. The parking garages are empty, but they're lit up. And yet the surrounding area is dark. No electricity. And people might say, why is that? Well, it's because of a couple things, I believe. Number one, if they shut off the electricity to the city, then the water mains in the city skyscrapers will burst. And nobody will have any water. Well, most people are having water problems anyway out in Texas. So they don't want to shut off those buildings because they know that those guys are going to pay their taxes. Those guys will pay their bills. But Joe Dokes, who lives in the village, is struggling. And he lost his job because of the corona panic, and he can't pay his bills. He can hardly feed himself. People are defaulting on their mortgages, their rent payments, and they think, I'm thinking at the highest levels of corporations, what would the king do? If you're a king of a corporation, what would you do? He'd say, well, let's just send electricity to the skyscrapers because they'll always pay your bills. And that's where City Hall is. And that's where the police departments are. And that's where the hospitals are. Kind of a mess, right? So the villagers are left out in the cold. But, when it warms up, I think the villagers are going to go, first thing that's going to come to mind is baseball. And Lucille. And I have a feeling some of the villagers are going to, when they think about some of the people who were impacted and maybe some of the people in their families who have died because they believe that the electric grid was, resilient, they're going to want to play baseball. I'm not recommending it, but I'm thinking, boy, people are going to be just frosted. So what would I do? Well, if it were up to me, I would have a really tall stack of pink slips. And I would be firing every member of the board of directors of every corporation that was involved in this morass. I'm talking about the natural gas companies. I'm talking about the electric utility distribution company. I'm talking about everyone, starting with them and going all the way down to the vice presidents of those corporations. They'd all be fired. If it were up to me, I'd fire them all. And I would fire the mayor and all of the mayor's lieutenants, everyone, for carelessness, recklessness, and abandoning the responsibilities of the job. That's what I do. There's a hospital in the United States right now with no water. No water. And so they can't flush the toilets. Now think about this. Think about all these stores, hospitals, all these places you've been to, the restrooms, and they have those toilets that you flush with your foot because you certainly don't want to touch it with your hand. These high pressure systems. Now contrast that to the toilets that have a tank in the back and fill up with water slowly, and you flush the handle and the water comes out of the tank and swirls around and flushes the toilet. Well, if you have one of those kind of toilets with a tank, you can always get a bucket of water and put it in the tank and flush the toilet. If you have one of those high pressure systems that they have at, Walmart, hospitals, Sam's Club, public buildings, town hall, the city hall, those places. If the water stops, they don't work. That's a big problem, right? It requires a high-pressure jet of water to flush those darn things. So the people who have approved those designs have painted themselves into a corner. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But that's what they've done. So fortunately, you don't have those in your home. But if you have a home that is fed by municipal water, you'll probably find out that you are at the mercy of the city water system. Now, in some places in Texas, they're saying boil the water. Boil the water because it's not safe to drink. It's not safe to drink because the system has failed. The electricity that controls the computers, that controls the solenoids, that controls the valves, that controls the water treatment chemicals are not working so well. So the water treatment chemicals are not necessarily being added at the right amounts for a safe potable water system. So they're saying boil the water. Well, you all know that, right? Some people don't even have water. So what are they boiling? Snow. Now, I'm not saying it's a good idea, but I'd rather have boiled snow than nothing. I mentioned to our class that we don't throw things out here at the farm. And so we probably have 100 juice bottles, 64-ounce juice bottles that would have cranberry juice or orange juice or whatever kind of juice, prune juice, whatever it might have been at the time. We save all those bottles. Now, if you think about it, let's say the juice cost $2 for 64 ounces. And let's say you were to take those same $2 and say, honey, let's buy a half a gallon container, reusable container. How much would that cost? Could you get one as good for $2 as the $2 bottle of juice with the juice? I don't think you can. I don't think you can buy a container that's as good, that's as durable, that would last as long as one of those juice bottles. So as the weather started getting colder here in Missouri, like 10 days ago, we had all these clean, washed out, with the caps on them, juice bottles. Labels are taken off, and they're filled up with water, just in case. Have we used them? No. But we didn't have to buy any water. So, antifreeze. In October, we looked at all of our equipment, and we checked with a antifreeze tester. And you can buy one. I just looked it up, and I just typed in antifreeze, one word, tester. So antifreeze, one word, tester, second word. And $2.99 at AutoZone. It's the same kind we have. And it works great. And you need to find out what the freezing temperature of that antifreeze is in your radiator. Well, we take ours down to minus 35. Now, Rich Sheben, his goes down to like minus 50 because it gets that cold in northwest Montana. So just a thought about antifreeze and $2.99 at AutoZone. And you get them at the Chinese factory outlet as well. And talk about battery chargers or batteries. Here's an interesting story. So believe it or not, when in elementary school, when we looked at the map of the United States, no one really said, now look here at Arkansas. The bottom corner of Arkansas, the southwest corner, is the border of Texas. So I'm looking at a video. It's just a small corner of Arkansas that, the northern part of Arkansas is as north as the northern part of Texas. Well, there's a corner of Arkansas, the southwestern corner, that borders Texas. And one side of this road is Texas. One side of the highway is Texas, 2 lanes going each way. The other side is Arkansas. Arkansas is plowed. You can see the road. The Texas side is a sheet of ice. Snow, ice. Why? That's a political thing because the people in Arkansas were paying attention and the people in Texas weren't. By the way, great time to have an electric car. Great time. How do you plug it in? Cathy, welcome.
Hi, Vince. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, very well. What's up?
Well, I wanted to make a couple comments. You were talking about using the juice jugs to store water, and I do the same thing. I have a spot in my pole barn where I just store a lot of empty vinegar jugs, and actually some of the half-gallon milk jugs that I have found, the plastic is thicker than a regular milk jug, and I save those also. But if there's going to be a storm, just when this whole thing started happening with us, we had quite a bit of snow. We have 2 bathtubs in our house, and the one that we don't use, I fill it up with water. And that way, if you need it for flushing the toilet or water to boil, I clean it first, and then I fill it up. But we also have like a utility sink, and I fill that up. I put a plug in there. But, you know, I have been without water earlier in my life, and you can do a lot if you just run around. If you know there's a thunderstorm or one of these kind of storms coming, even if you fill up like your stock pot and water pitchers in the house, and you can kind of make do with that. But that's just a couple ideas that I had, that if somebody, you know, just says, I just don't have the water jug. So that's what I do is if there's a thunderstorm or an ice storm coming, I fill up the bathtub, and if it looks like it's bad, I'd fill up both of them just so I'd have the water if I needed it.
Yeah, and how much does it cost to keep one of those 64-ounce clear plastic juice jugs? How much does it cost to keep one that you already bought? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. All you have to do is find a place to store it. And you can put, if you want to keep them nice and clean, after you wash them out, you can keep the cap on loosely, and you can put them in a big trash bag, and that keeps the dust off them. And you can put them in the garage, put them in the basement, put them in the barn. You can hang them on a nail in the trash bag in the barn if you have it. And I'm using the barn, but not everybody has a barn. But what I'm trying to indicate is that a barn is not necessarily a non-dusty environment.
Right.
But people are throwing these away. They don't realize how valuable these containers are. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I really feel for those people in Texas. They're not used to the cold, and I saw pictures this morning of people standing in line with thin coats on and just trying to get water, and boy, what a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you want to know who's got electricity and who doesn't, and, you know, when there's snow on the roof, you look at the houses with no snow on the roof or less snow, because the insulation has not been great, and the heat has melted the snow on the roof. So if you're wondering who's freezing and who's not, the ones who have less snow on the roof are probably warmer than the ones who do have snow on the roof. Cathy, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. And you're going to be with us next week, right?
Yes, I will. Next Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you so much. I'm going to send you an email when we get off the air. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Ben.
Bye-bye. All right, class, that kicks it in the head for hour number 1. And Rush Limbaugh has passed away, a great broadcaster. And what you're going to find is more and more broadcasters are going to have silent microphones because we're getting older. I'm almost 70.
This is Cathy. I'm at USA Prepared with my friend Vince. We've been talking about repairing washing machines and prevention. I have a couple comments, Vince. One was in our other house, and I still have the washing machine and my dryer. I have the old Maytag, and my Maytag right now is, I believe it's 36 years old, my dryer. We did have to replace the washer, but the man came in when I was having trouble with a dishwasher, and he was the one that replaced the dishwasher switch. And he came in and he looked at those Maytags, and he said, "Lady," he said, "hang on to those Maytags as long as you can. They don't make them like that anymore." And he said, "Whatever parts cost," he said, "I would just replace them or keep replacing them as long as you can." So I still have my dryer, and I have another old used Maytag that I use. But what you were saying, Vince, is is really true, that they sure don't make them like they used to.
I had a comment about that, Cathy. Years ago, when people like you and your husband and Mrs. Finelli and I and our parents would buy an appliance, we might have gone to an appliance store, and if they sold Maytag, there would be a display, and it would be a little display of us versus them, and the Maytag display would say, "Here's our belt. Here's our pulley," and they take a small section of the belt if it's a dryer. Here's the pulley that we use in our dryer. Here, and here's theirs. And you'd find that theirs, meaning the other brands that competed with Maytag before Maytag was, bundled in with the Whirlpool group, you would see that everything that Maytag, all the Maytag parts were heavier, stronger, weighed more, etc. And that's why they were so durable. And so the Maytag name was the name that was synonymous with appliance durability. So, yes, and that's probably why the appliance repair person said what he said. And he's absolutely, positively correct. Everything was heavier on a Maytag, and that's why they lasted longer. But today, we don't seem to be the GDP, they seem to be more interested in, well, can I get it in candy apple red? That's really important. Or do you have one that has a satin stainless steel finish? You have one of those. Or do you have one that has more cycles because more cycles is important? That's nuts. Because frankly, there's only really 2 cycles that you need on a washing machine. Gentle and regular. That's it. And, I may be confused, but I can get everything done with those 2 cycles. And probably 80 or 90% of what I want to get done, or Mrs. Finelli wants to get done with a washer, gets done with the regular cycle. Is that true, Cathy, with you guys too?
Oh, absolutely. To me, function has always been more important than all the bells and whistles, and I think more can go wrong. I just like the old-fashioned, you turn the handle, there's no computer screen or computerized parts at the top. Mine's just the old-fashioned, you turn it. Yep.
That's what we have. I wanted to get back to the capacitor for just a couple minutes. So, class, this capacitor, I said, starts the motor, the electric motor of the washing machine. By the way, it's gasoline and diesel engines and electric motors. Okay? And now an electric car has an electric motor, but they're electric motors. That's why I use the term motor. The capacitor starts the motor spinning. And you can go to the internet and you can just type in Whirlpool washer won't start. And you'll find a whole bunch of results. And you may see a timer. Now, it could be the timer, but more likely than not, it's the capacitor that's the problem. And a capacitor will stay charged for maybe an hour or 2. So if it was charged and if it does work, you can get shocked by touching it. So when you work with a washing machine or any appliance, you want to unplug it, right? And then if you're going to work with that capacitor, you can discharge it. It's not comfortable for the capacitor. It's hard on it. But you can discharge it with a screwdriver across the 2 terminals. But make sure the washing machine has been unplugged and you've let it set for an hour or 2 to naturally discharge. If the capacitor has failed already, it won't have a charge in it to begin with. But if it is good, you could shock yourself. I had a friend when I was growing up, and he would charge up a capacitor and put it in his front pants pocket. And this is in the grammar school days. And he'd walk up to someone, and he would shock them right through his pants, through their pants, and they wouldn't know what happened. So, you can get shocked with them. And the cost is about $15, and buy a new one rather than a used one if you're going to do it. And keep it cool and dry, and I put it in a Ziploc bag kind of thing and, mark what it's for if you're going to buy one to have as a spare. And that way you keep air from exchanging and having the capacitor fail just from being in the air longer than it needs to be. There's another thing that you can think about, and that is the fill valve. Now, if you have galvanized pipes, or if you have silt in your pipes without having a whole house water filter. This silt can clog the screen in what's called the fill valve. The fill valve is where those two hoses connect from your plumbing system behind the washing machine to the washer. You have those black hoses typically, and where they connect to the washer is there's a screen that filters out the chunks, and it's a pretty fine mesh screen. So if you have calcium, hard water, you will be clogging that screen, and you'll see a very slow filling of the washing machine. In terms of water, it takes a long time. Well, if you shut off the water, use that crescent wrench that I talked about, you can unscrew the brass couplings or the stainless couplings to the fill valve. And usually the fill valve threads are plastic, so you won't have corrosion locking the hose to the fill valve threads. You'll see a screen in there. And if it's lime, vinegar will dissolve the lime. You can take the vinegar and put it in a small little, a saucer, if you will, or a little cup. And you only need like a quarter of an ounce. Put on a Q-tip, dab it on the screen, and you'll start to dissolve the lime. That's a way to dissolve the lime. Or if you can figure out how to pour it in there without having it run down the back of the washer, that'd be great. But bear in mind that vinegar is corrosive. So I use paper towels to make sure if I drip, I don't drip down the galvanized steel plate on the back of the washing machine. Then you can use like an old toothbrush, and you can scrub out the calcium deposits that have been loosened by the vinegar. Or if it's rust, you can do the same thing. And if you have one of those little spray bottles that you might water your plants with, you can spray vinegar in there, and then rinse it with a final rinse of water and get all those chunks and deposits out of there, and then it'll fill better. But let's say your fill valve is broken and only the hot side works. Well, that's kind of common because most of your washing is with cold water and less of it's done with hot water. So the hot water side of the fill valve wears out faster. If you're determined that you don't want to buy or replace the fill valve, you don't have to. All you do is switch the hot and cold hoses. So the cold water line is connected to the hot side of the fill valve, and the hot side is connected to the cold. And then you just set your washing machine to hot, which is really drawing cold water. And you don't have to replace that fill valve, but you'll only be using cold water. Okay? That's one very easy way to solve the problem, and I've done that for years. I've decided that, I'm just going to get a spare fill valve. And I ordered that on eBay as well. And so in our plumbing department, for the washing machines, we have a spare Whirlpool washer, and here's some of the keywords: Whirlpool washer, water, inlet, fill valve. And you can buy the same one that I bought. It was $14.55 shipped. Now, what do they cost if you buy a Whirlpool brand? Now, this would be a made in China brand. They work fine. I see here, here's one for $192. It's a little different, but you can spend way more money than you need to. Here's another one that's $157. You can get them for a little over $14, and they work just fine. So you might want to have one of those spares, spare washing machine fill valve. You might want to have a spare capacitor. You might want to have some spare dogs, and you might want to have a spare water pump, and you might want to have a spare drive coupling. It might be a little more than $30, but I was thinking, the big ones would be the drive coupling, the water pump, and the fill valve. So about $30 does that. Capacitor drives it, closer to $50. But you may find that it's not the capacitor. Now you can go to you can go to YouTube and type in test washing machine capacitor. And there's a bunch of YouTube videos, and I'll show you how to do that with your digital voltmeter or your analog voltmeter. It's really simple. It takes 10 seconds to test it. All you do is you set first of all, you want to make sure your capacitor is discharged, and then you can, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. because I want to make sure you do it carefully and correctly, just go to YouTube and look at testing washing machine capacitor. It's literally a couple seconds. So those are a couple of the big ones. And there's another thing that you can do to, and I really like this one. There is a transmission in these washing machines. The transmission is it's in a cast iron case. It's machined. It has a couple gears, if you will. And it's bathed in oil. And there's a little vent hole so that as the oil expands, it doesn't pop the seals on the transmission. But I believe when these were made, they used conventional oil rather than synthetic oil, which can tend to volatilize. And so if you start out with a quart of oil, you have less, in 10, 15, 20 years. So what I did was I added more oil. But Whirlpool, Maytag, Kenmore, those brands do not have a way of removing a fill plug to pour the oil in. So what there is a top cover with a little tiny hole. And the hole is about the size of a ballpoint pen. So if you want to fill this thing up or top it off, you're going to have to guess. So what I used was synthetic differential lubricant, which you can call gear oil, 75W90 full synthetic gear oil. And I put it over the heating vent in the house to warm it up. And then I got a syringe, a cattle syringe, which is about 2/3 of an ounce. So it's a pretty big hypodermic needle. And I ground the pointed tip flat so that I just put on the grinding wheel, wore some safety goggles, and ground that off flat. And now I put a dental pick in there to remove the burrs, and I'll tell you the rest. So the transmission, you can see the transmission when you remove the front cover of the washing machine. It's below the tub. And you'll see it's a cast iron piece. It's heavy. And there is a stamped sheet metal lid on top with a little bump. And the bump would be about half the size of a marble, from yesteryear, marbles. And in the center of this bump, this raised bump, is a little tiny hole the size of the ball of a ballpoint pen. So it's actually smaller than a number 2 pencil lead. And you can use that to fill up the transmission, but, take forever. But you can top it off pretty easily. But you have to probably make a tool, and I don't know if you can buy a tool to do this. So I took a cattle syringe that we had, we got a bunch of those because sometimes we have to give cattle an injection if they get sick, vitamins, that kind of thing. Well, so these syringes hold about 2/3 of an ounce. And I heat the 75W90 gear oil, which is pretty thick. It's like the thickness of, let's say, vegetable oil, maybe a little bit thicker. But if you warm it up on the heating vent for a couple hours, it will be able to be pushed through this large diameter hypodermic needle. But the shape of the hypodermic needle needs to be modified. So you have to grind off the point because you can't fill it with the point, the sharp edge of the needle. You have to grind that flat. And you can use a file, you can use a grinding wheel. And then you might have some burrs, so you can use a dental pick to, make sure that the end is not closed shut through the grinding operation. Then you have to bend it into the shape of an L. So you take half of the needle, at the center of the needle, you can put it in a flame, a gas flame with a pair of pliers, heat it till it glows red, and just gently heat it, and then you can put a gentle bend into this hypodermic needle. So instead of a straight needle, it's shaped like an L. Now once you've done that, you can fill the hypodermic needle, take out the plunger, fill it with this 75W90 full synthetic gear oil, and you can just slowly pump it through the syringe into the transmission, through that little tiny vent hole that I talked about. And if you use full synthetic oil, it'll go in easier. And what I have found is the transmissions absolutely sound magnificent. It takes what might have been a slightly noisy transmission in a washing machine, and it turns it into a silky, smooth, better than new sound. It's incredible. It seems to have more power. It's smoother. And I know for a fact that it will last way longer. So you can buy the gear oil that, Whirlpool sells by the quart, or you can spend way less and have a multi-purpose 75W90 full synthetic gear oil. You can get it at the Chinese factory outlet. You can get it at, AutoZone, etc. But it has to be warm to push it through the hypodermic needle. And I have a feeling that your husband, when he hears this, he's going to want to do it to your washing machine with the agitator. It really, really works well. Any comments, Cathy, about that?
Oh, I think you're right. I'm going to play it for him later. Vince, okay. I have a question for you before I have to go. You talked about having spare appliances. If we were to get any extra, we have a pole barn, but it's not heated. Is that okay to store appliances, or are you going to risk like a rust situation or the hot to cold?
Yeah, and here's the problem. There's a moisture problem. When you say you have a pole barn, does it have like lots of air leaks like everybody else's pole barn, or is it pretty tight?
It's fairly tight, but I mean, there's no gaps underneath the. We have a great big door, and then we have another side door, and then like a regular garage door. We have like 3 doors, but none of them leak. But it's not heated in any way. So,
how about moisture? On in the morning, after a cool night, cool damp night, is anything damp inside in the morning?
It is if it were to rain, like if we were to get rain or, yeah.
So here's the answer. The answer is mice love to find shelter. So they'll get in there. I mean, mice can set up shop in there, and that's a problem. So I think the appliance will not last as long in that environment as it would with garage doors that close tightly, like overhead garage doors, and a concrete floor. So I didn't have the call screen up, and Arjun, you've been on hold for a better part of an hour.
No.
Welcome. How can I help you?
It's fine. Yep, it's no problem at all. First of all, and it's good to talk to you after a long time.
Yeah, it's great to hear your voice.
I'm actually, yes, I'm actually facing a problem at my work, and the thing is that my coworkers, they actually don't miss any opportunity to insult me, and the thing is that they have created situations that I'm not fresh out of college. I have been working for some time, and I've seen these situations previously also, and during those times I didn't have any other option but just to continue with my work. But the thing is that but now it's the situation, they create such pressured situation for you. Even if you ask for if you ask for a small thing, they will come out and they will insult you. If the manager is not there, they will insult you. And if you tell the manager this thing, then they will not actually help you out. So this is the problem that actually I'm facing, and it's not actually a new thing. I have seen this thing many times, and this is the only reason why I leave my jobs. If I move to another jobs, and I only leave my job just because of this reason, that these things starts happening in the job, and this is happening at this current place also. So I don't know how to tackle it. If I just if I have to stay here, then I just have to just take up all these things, and it just ruins your day, and it's just so much pressure mentally, on your brain, and so this is the problem that actually I'm facing here.
Okay, so Arjun, how long have you been at this company?
1 year, around 1 year, yes.
Okay. Can you change companies easily?
Easily, yeah. Well, actually, yeah, I can find jobs, I can actually move to other jobs. Yes, I can, yes.
Okay. And are you working from home or are you working in with other people in the same room at their site, meaning the company site?
Yep. I'm working from home since COVID.
Okay. So when these other people give you a hard time, did you say they insult you? Is that the term you used? Because I didn't hear that very clearly.
Yes.
Okay. So the problem is
they will insult you. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Is this kind of a group thing where they insult you on like a conference call, a video conference call, a audio conference call? Is that it, or is it just one person insulting you at a time?
Yes. Well, there are two people. Like one is my coworker. One is my coworker, and then there is another lady. And so they have been working together for a long time, and they will only do it like when the manager is not in the call. And
okay,
so they have yes.
Okay, so I think I have some of what I need to help you. So it sounds like you're the odd guy, the odd man out. Now, that doesn't mean that you're weird or anything. It's just that they have been working together for a while, and you're the new guy. Is that right?
Yeah, it could be like that, or it could be that there is sort of a thing that people need praise for whatever they are doing, and it's very hard for me to provide fake praise, to these guys, and so I think that's why I think like that. I think I'm an odd guy. That's one reason. That's what. Yeah.
Okay. Are you the most technically competent of the three?
Well, actually, no. There is another guy who has been working for more years than me, so he's more technically competent here.
Okay. Well, it sounds to me like this is driving you crazy, and I have been in situations where I've worked with other people. And people used to say to me when I was in Virginia, working at our own computer manufacturing company, so what is it about computers? Why do you like working with computers? And I would say, because I can't stand working with people. And for the kind of reasons that you've discussed, it is awful working with most people. They're petty. They're jealous. And if there's a corporate ladder and you're trying to do a good job and you're trying to climb the corporate ladder by doing, being the best you can be for, riding for the brand, pulling for the company, doing the best you can for the company so the company does well, and maybe they'll recognize that you help them do well, and, as they do better, you do better, all that kind of stuff. Well, there are always people who are jealous of that. And so while you're trying to climb the corporate ladder by doing just the right thing, the good thing, good job, going above and beyond, there are people who are trying to either shake the ladder and knock you off or just flat out pull you down off the ladder. And if they pull you down, they can climb and take your place. And that's what people are like. And that's why it's miserable working with many people, most people. And I don't like that. So, you have a choice, and you have the same choice that I had. And I had in my case, it was my boss. He was a drunk. He was a miserable guy. And no matter what I did, in the Monday morning, he'd say, call me into his office. Vinny. He was vice president at the time. And I reported directly to him. Vinny, I want you to go right, keep going right, and I'll tell you when to stop. Okay. And I'd go back to my cubicle, and I would go, and I was in charge of computer systems. And I would do my thing, and I'd keep going right, and he'd call me in on Tuesday, and he'd say, okay, so where are you? And I go, well, I've been going right. And he'd go, what's the matter with you? I told you to go left. What's the matter with you? And I get beat up. No matter what I did, I got beat up, and it was awful. So what I did was I saw a course on how to be, it was back in the 80s, how to invest in real estate and become financially independent. And it was $495 for this Al Lowery course. It was Saturday and Sunday, and you could attend all morning of Saturday, and if you didn't like it, you get your money back. But if you stayed, you didn't get any money back. Your $495 was kept by the people who offered this course. Spent the $495, and I was absolutely enthralled. I thought, I can do this. I can invest in real estate, buy single family houses, apartment buildings, etc., and I can make it work. And so what happened was I started, after I spent the $495, I spent $100 on books. Now I was into it for about $600. I came home and talked to Mrs. Finelli and told her what I did. And now that I spent $600 back in the 1980s, that was a lot of money. So I had to go buy a building. So I bought an apartment building. And I bought the wrong one. And I realized it. So I bought another one. And that wasn't the right one either. So I bought the third one. That was the right one. So I bought 3 apartment buildings in 1 month, set them all to close on the same day. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And the banks didn't know about it. I spent way more money than they'd ever lend me. No bank would ever lend me that much money. And I had the closings, and now I was the owner, and they lent me the funds. Well, I was a real estate investor at that point, and then I kept buying one more building a month. And after a while, after 11 months, I had a bunch of buildings. And I had tenants, and I had cash flow, and everything was working. And I had the financial independence at that time to go to my boss's boss and say, I really like the company, but I really don't want to work for this guy. He's hard to work for. Can I work for this other guy? And the boss said, if you can convince the other guy to let you work for him, yeah, go ahead. So I asked the other guy, who was a wonderful boss. And because I had the financial independence and back then I had a mortgage. I didn't have car payments, but I had a mortgage because we had a nice house and we were renovating the house, and I was renovating these apartment buildings and single family homes in the evenings after work and on weekends. Well, the bottom line was I had the courage to say, you know what, I have enough security that I've built for myself and my family as the head of the household to ask for a different boss. And that was, asking for a different boss is unheard of. At least back in the 80s it was. And I had the courage to do that. So, after that, I've been independent and, do whatever I want because I had the financial independence. That doesn't mean rich. That just means I had enough cash flow and I made enough, profit, and I could keep this whole, series of apartment buildings and houses, afloat because I did it carefully. Well, the point I'm trying to make is I had an awful situation that probably would have given me a heart attack or a stroke had I stayed in it because, well, heck, I had a mortgage and I had to provide for the family. Well, because I became financially independent, which I am to this day, financially independent, I can do whatever I want. I mean, it doesn't mean I can be stupid and go buy a, Lamborghini, or just spend recklessly. I'm not wealthy, but I'm not dependent on anybody for income. I make my own income through farming. Well, that's how come we can be independent radio. That's how come I can say the things I say. Because if they fire me, it's okay. It changes nothing in terms of income. My house doesn't depend on it. My cars don't depend on it. Nothing financial depends on radio. It only depends on the farm. So is there something that you can do like that to give you the backing of being financially independent so you can do whatever you want and just, say, I don't want to do this anymore?
Well, actually, I actually currently, I have planned a lot previously. I have looked into many different houses and buildings even, but actually, I was not able to convert that. I've went through a few problems in my life, and my credit history actually went bad after that. So
I'm not necessarily saying, Arjun, I'm not necessarily saying buy investment properties.
Yeah.
I'm not saying necessarily that. What I'm saying is there something that you can do to provide you with the economic stability / cash flow so that you can give this particular job a heave-ho and not risk losing your current living situation?
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is that, I will have to, I will have to give up on this job and then find another job. So, I mean, it's just like switching another thing. That's the most easiest option that I have done previously. And
is it so bad, Arjun, that you can't stand it? Is that really the case? It's that bad? Because there's another thing you can do, and you can do what Norm Shealy says. Dr. Shealy. You can detach. You can say to yourself, these guys that I work with are a bunch of idiots. So they'll tell me to jump this high, and I'll just jump that high. I'm not going to do any more. I'm not going to do any less. I'm just going to do what's required, and I'll build my backstop, my own independence. Arjun's with us, and he has some questions about his job, and I explained and delineated what I did when I had a situation where I had a miserable working environment, but I worked for a wonderful company. It's the kind of thing where everything was going great, and then I get a new boss. They hire this new guy, and then they say, oh yeah, by the way, Vinny, you're going to report to him now, because he's the new guy that we've inserted between you and the very top management. That's what happened to me. So Arjun, Norm Shealy has said, Dr. Shealy said, stress is a killer, and absolutely no question about it is. And if you think you're going to, die of a heart attack or, stress or stroke or whatever from the situation, you need to get out of there. But if you can detach from it, which is something also that Dr. Norman Shealy talks about, if you can detach and say, these guys are just a bunch of idiots, and I'm going to ignore all of it, I'm just going to do, what they asked me to do, the minimum, then you can stick with it while you build your backstop plan. Now, there are people who are petty, little people, not physically in stature, just little people who just enjoy, being mean. Okay.
Yes.
So I might say in one of these calls, if I'm getting beaten up, something like this, because I really don't care, but you have to be prepared to lose your job. If you complain to the boss, you might get terminated because, well, heck, he's a complainer, even if you're right. So that's a problem. Whistleblowers are the first to get thrown out. You say, hey, the company's doing this illegally, and you think you're doing the right thing by fixing the problem, and you get fired. So you got to be careful about that if you value your job. But there are these petty people, and they do the kinds of things that you're talking about. So I might be, if I didn't care about the job, I might be tempted to say something like, is that, I heard what you said, but is that the same way you talk to your husband or your wife or your mother or your father or your children, or you just save that from me? I might be tempted to do that, but you have to be prepared, to escalate the fight. But, the other thing you can do is start applying for those other jobs and then have one. And then, when you ultimately, leave, you can leave on your terms rather than their terms. But if you are applying for another job, I suggest that you do not say, oh, these people are horrible. They yell at me. They make fun of me. They pick on me. I wouldn't say that. I would just say, I'm looking for more challenge. Okay. I'm not being challenged very much where I am. And I know that I can do more than, they are allowing me to do. So I'm looking for, more challenge, not necessarily more money. I would never talk about money under those circumstances. Now, if you have a headhunter looking for you and wants to, bring you from one company to another company, I might say, okay, so what's in it? What are the parameters? Where is it? What is it? And how much is it? I might say something like that. Does that make any sense when I've mentioned, Arjun? I've spoken from experience. I mean, literally these things have happened to me.
Yeah, no, definitely it does. And last time when we spoke, I started applying for small jobs, like in small towns, like in Missouri I tried, then I tried in Kentucky, I tried in New Mexico, where these states which have like small towns and they needed like some guy with my skill set. So there might be like one job, like they are still, they are working on the background checks and everything in Kentucky. It's like this city called Fort Knox or something like that in Kentucky. So I think, but the salary will be like slashed in half the salary that I have right now. But I think it has become like unbearable here. I will try to the detached word, like that Dr. Norm Shealy explained, like it just hit me, like when he was explaining this thing. And it's an amazing thing,
Arjun, let me ask you.
Doing that, yes. Yeah.
Arjun, you're in,
Yep.
What state are you in? What state?
I'm in New Jersey. You know, like currently I live in New Jersey, but work is in New York.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds to me like being in New York, working in New York, that would be higher income level than in many other places other than maybe Silicon Valley, California. Is that right? Your salary would be higher?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
But also living in the Garden State, New Jersey, your expenses are higher, right?
It is. Yes. It's same. It's same, almost same as like New York, but a little bit less, but almost same as New York, you know.
Yeah. Half the pollution.
Little bit less. Yes.
Okay. All right. So,
pollution, yes.
all right. So if you move to Missouri and you could work remotely, you know, all you need is the internet. You could get some acreage, get a few acres. You could start with an inexpensive modular home, and your expenses would be so little. I mean, your income, your taxes for your real estate could be less than $100 a year. So, your internet costs would be, 10 times what your real estate taxes would be. So I suggest, and I'm talking about Missouri, in rural Missouri. So you might want to consider that. But working with lousy people is really lousy. So I don't like doing that. I like working with nice people.
Yeah.
I really do.
Exactly.
So feel free to call and keep us up to date with what your plans are, and I'll be glad to help